Okay, so I'm doing a little bit of work to the Hummer here. I'm gonna put these springs up in here. I know that this is not the best way to have this attached just right there, but actually it's pretty solid. These are screwed down very, very tightly. Like it's squished it into the plastic. I don't know if you can see that, but it has squished its way down into the plastic. So it's pretty firmly in there. Now I'm gonna add some helper springs. This, I'm hoping, holds this axle on a little better. The rear one. I am still sick. It's been like 2 weeks. Anyway, almost 3 now. So I'm gonna add these little helpers here, and then I'm gonna try to find some kind of piece of metal or something to help brace this in here the whole way. I might maybe fiberglass. Maybe I'll fiberglass this into place. And then we'll have all kinds of different shock mounts to run different kinds of shocks in different areas and for different things. I've got, for an example, I've got a rear axle that I can run a couple of different shocks on and still have the mounting links. I unscrewed one of these parts here. I actually don't know where it went, but it's the mount that goes on here and the mount that holds these two arms, this mount right here. It actually screws on. You can see the screw through right there. So this is just a bracket that holds these arms on, and so that bracket doesn't have this screw on it, which means that this will happen. So I'd have to figure out a way to keep the axle solid like this one, or possibly even maybe just throw a servo on it. Maybe run this axle instead and put a servo on it, and then we'll have a rear steer axle on the Hummer. Possibly. I don't know. We'll see. Ideally, I would like to have 5th scale axles on here, or the axial 6 scale axles is what I'm looking for. Whenever I get the chance, I might stop over at the hobby store and see if they have any, but for right now, I'm just gonna throw these springs in here and hope that these screws hold in place. I might do some janky stuff with a glue gun, but or maybe that JB Weld plastic Bondo stuff. Maybe I'll throw a bunch of that in there and then let that sit for a couple days, because that stuff hardens to everything, and once I put it on there, that will never come off. So that would be a good mounting point. And plus, this gives actual metal rails to mount the shocks too, so that is a huge bonus, seeing as I can just come in and just put as many holes as I want in here, or if I want to like go down here and mount all the way down here, or if I still want to mount here, wherever the new axle takes me, this is going to give me a bunch of places to mount to. So as far as that goes, and then we still have a plastic axle here. I would like to upgrade this to metal, but seeing as it's the rear axle and most of the drama comes from the front, and these axles are a lot harder to find and make, seeing as all of that, is a problem. I think I'm going to leave the back one plastic so that it is a weak point and the front one doesn't snap. It's the rear one that snaps. Because theoretically, with it being two separate pieces here, it is half as strong, and that makes me assume that it's as strong as this could ever be. So hopefully this is the breaking point, it being a cheap axle. I mean, I've got a whole nother one just sitting here, and between these two pieces here there's a whole axle. It's the front, the little spline, and then this is the part that the spline goes into. So I mean, as far as all this goes, I took out the aluminum rails that were in there. They just weren't holding it right. It was bending the front of the chassis too much. Or it was bending these rails here way too much. Now, with it being detached from that, this has also been strengthened up here now. So we're gonna try to make a pretty strong mounting point for the shocks. So far this is doing pretty good. I mean, I'd say it's got all the strength it needs. I mean, with it being plastic, there's not really too much I can do unless I were to get a custom frame or figure out a proper way to make one, which I have been thinking about, so this might happen, is a solid frame that goes the whole way, and or possibly even running, if I do a frame rail the whole way, then I could run the stock shocks, and then they would have a bump stop. So they would have a good working bump stop. The way this sets up is it just kind of stops wherever the wheel hits the body, which will be like right here. So that's why I want to put these in there. Maybe fix some of that droop. Yeah, there we go. There's a little update on the Hummer build. Just going over all kinds of different mounting places. Again, when I get the fifth wheel axles, I want to mount up here for the front with some big shocks that'll fit through there, like big shocks, something like that, as opposed to something as small as that from a 10th scale. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the 5th scale axles is what this is missing. Maybe I shouldn't have started with the 10th scale. I'm starting to look back at that now, but all of this can come off. So don't forget then, all of this can come off, and I can turn this whole thing into a whole nother RC car still. So with that being said, if I do switch everything to 5th scale motor, 5th scale gearbox, 5th scale axles, and have to switch to 5th scale wheel hexes, because this is 12 mil hex. So if I have to go to 17, they make custom hexes for these wheels, so that's perfect. I'll continue to be able to use these. Then I probably also won't have to use these spacers that are just horrible. And then finally the bearings in those axles will probably be big enough to hold this weight. Because this body, it is pretty heavy, but I mean, it weighs like almost 20 pounds with the wheels and battery and everything in it. So I know that I'm putting a lot of strain on these pieces of metal here. As you can tell, this is the solid point in the back holding it in place, and then this is where it mounts to the chassis, and then it is also glued, CA glued, and all kinds of mess to the back, because the back is cut out from here to there. So there's like this huge gap in here, perfect for a motor to sit in. So that's what I did. There's a method to the madness, but hopefully we can just swap over the axles to 5th scale axles and I won't have to change any of the important parts that are hard to swap out. And then the bigger, way bigger shocks, front and rear, that'll make a huge difference as well, because I can measure out what I need for the rear and measure out what I'd need for the front and get the custom sizes that I need, and they still be strong shocks because they're measured out to be where they need to be. When I redo the front, this truck will be a little lower, helping with its stability. And then I also plan on putting some lead on the sides here and maybe some more in the center, just to bring the weight down. I might also put some back in here and some up in here, like I said, just so the weight is down towards the center and it's able to maneuver and not tip over. Because currently right now, which the main reason I'm switching to a stronger spring is because with these big wheels and with, well, any kind of lift on this truck, it becomes super top heavy. And that is because all of the electronics and lights, and the majority of the equipment is on the top. Now this could bring quite a bit of the weight down, because I could also mount the battery down here. I doubt that I'll do that, but I could. That could bring quite a bit of weight down. I could just put a piece of metal in there as a huge weight, and then just put a piece of metal right here as a huge weight, and then that would be it, because that would keep it down quite a bit. And yeah, so some 5th scale or 6th scale, sorry, metal axles. Wow, the camera